Thank you for joining us today on Louder Than Green. Today we have a very exciting guest, and if you're building anything sustainable, regenerative, or just smarter than the status quo, you're in the right place. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Green That Dream, and we specialize in helping businesses not just go green, but flourish. We focus on strategies that support people, planet, and profits by improving operations and managing resources. So if you're ready to take your business to the next level, stick around. And if you want a free growth consultation, head over to greenthatdream.com or just DM us the word growth. Now let's get into it. We are here today on Louder Than Green with our guest, JC Vautrin. He is a one-of-a-kind sustainability expert, a former oil industry CEO turned green business founder, advisor, and educator. And he is also a 2025 nominee for Sustainability Leader of the Year by the Flux Awards. With over 30 years of global leadership across energy, ESG, waste management, and the emerging blue economy, JC brings a rare blend of boardroom experience and environmental vision. Whether it's guiding early-stage founders or advising corporate leaders, JC's message is clear. Sustainability isn't about reports and glossy language. It's about strategy, and the companies that get it will lead the future. So thank you so much for joining us today, JC.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited to have you. So let's start at the beginning, because your background is really one of the most unique I've come across in sustainability. You have a very interesting resume out there. So I'd love to hear how your journey went from oil and gas to green entrepreneurship.
Okay, it's a very interesting question. And to go back a little bit, I have been educated in the productivity, shareholders' interest and priority, Milton Friedman, and this was the fashion in the night. And some people that were already raising the alarm, but they were not being heard. Okay. And so I started to work in the oil industry, actually everything that has to do with refining, transportation, distribution. From there, I went to finance, and then I moved to waste management, and then I decided to go deeper into sustainability. So it was quite a journey, but I would say it was more an evolution than a revolution. And I think the fact that I have gone through these industries and also bridging the gap for companies, because there are a lot of people that are very specialized, but there is kind of silo approach for companies. And one thing that struck me is that actually they don't know where to start. I am dealing with people who are very intelligent, very smart, very educated, but they've been modeled into a certain kind of a system. And actually, they know that there is a problem there, but they don't know where to start. And this was my first source of astonishment, by the way. And I said, look, this is an opportunity to help other people. So as you mentioned, I am helping startups. I am helping bigger companies. And so it's both ways is good, you see. So it's an exchange, because I come with questions, and then we work together towards the solution. So the solution can be very different, because this is a complex world. So this is my journey. I am passionate about nature. I am a scuba diving instructor, for example, so I've seen firsthand the devastated underwater landscape. And there is something that we need to do, and also clarify to the people that sustainability is not an expense. It's an investment. With CEO leaders, we tell you, yes, but I have no budget for that. I cannot spend money on that. And actually, the first things that I am telling them is that it's not an expense. An expense is something that does not bring anything. It's necessary sometimes, most of the times, but it's not a strategic tool. An investment is a strategic tool. And actually, I show them that actually the fiduciary duty of the organization is not limited to pleasing the shareholders. It's also involving pleasing the stakeholders, because it's absolutely clear that companies that are respectful of the stakeholders, they are really more profitable in the long term. It can be neutral in the short term and mid term, but I mean, they will be the survivors. The people who don't adapt will not survive. And next to it, what I tell them, besides the profitability, is also the risk management. If you look at, there was a recent report from Allianz, the German insurance companies, and they published the 10 worries for companies' management. And among these 10 worries, there were 6 that were related to climate change and sustainability. It could be supply chain disruption, it could be civil unrest, it could be floods, it could be... So it's really becoming something that is important. In 2023, it's a study made by Heidrick and Struggles, BCG, and INSEAD, and it said 79% felt that they had a clear understanding of the strategic opportunities and risk of sustainability, but only 29% felt knowledgeable enough to challenge or oversee sustainability execution effectively, and 48% said sustainability experience was not or only slightly considered when appointing board members. Look at, there was a study that was issued a few days ago by PwC that said that 60% identified the CEO as the primary owner of sustainability strategy, but only 10% agreed the organization regularly measures or tracks return on investment from sustainability effort. So it means, in theory, they are aware. In practice, they don't know. And they don't know how to tackle the issue. And I think that I can be in the shoes, because I have been there, done that. And I can understand them, and they can understand me, right? Because we work for the same thing. You know, business leaders, they usually have 2 issues. The first issue is how to make more money, and the second issue is how to solve pains. So if you come to them and with one of these chapters or one of these points of the agenda, they will listen to you. If you go and talk to a CEO and talk about ethics or stakeholders management or all these principles that are in the books, in some books, it does not talk to them, actually, you know, because it's not the priority. And this is why it's ethical standards and ethical approach, etc. It's a personal value for me. It can be embedded in a company, but it's not the main driver for company to do something. Company must be convinced that at the same time they mitigate the risk, and at the same time they have a business opportunity. So where can they go? So if they go to the Big Four, those Big Four are full of conflict of interest, because at the same time they say growth, 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 and the other departments say responsible growth, and the legislation is evolving like this, right? And how can you trust them? Because all this needs a change of culture, a change of paradigm in the company. And you know, the board members, the top leaders of companies, they're very worried, because in a company like Stena, that is a Scandinavian shipping company, when they put the digital system into place, digitalization of the company, 50% of the top management had to go or wanted to go, because actually in this, it's based on measurements. First, you need to measure. And then all these measurements, they put people at stake, you see? On top of them, you have some youngsters that don't even know what a necktie is. They put the feet on the table and they say, oh, it sucks. Okay, sorry, I caricature a little bit. And then 25 years old, they're 30 years old, and they're disturbing this usual way of doing things. So they're very useful, but they can be scary. And they also don't have the business experience that I have in all these sectors that makes, I guess, the business leaders more comfortable, because this cultural change is something, it's a process. So I would say culture, and culture. Then priorities, then we can see how we do start, because actually my recommendation is that we start with the small things. And along your questions, I will give more precisions on the statements that I did.
Yeah. So going into that, embedding sustainability into business strategy, as we're starting to talk about, what are some of those solutions that are working, and which ones are maybe overhyped, that sound really good but are not really practical to be making an impact?
You have different levels in your question. So is for example, there are things that is absolutely absurd. This is carbon credit, well, because you pay other people to fix your sins. It does not work. It's a complete nonsense. For me, it's absolutely greenwashing. You have the question, for example, of the airlines that want people to make believe that they will fly with SAFs, and actually it does not work. It can work for 3%, 5%, okay, let's be optimistic, 10%, but the planes will be still flying 90% with kerosene. And kerosene, if you live next to an airport, is a little bit toxic, to say the least, right? So at the same time, thanks God, they take the decision to modernize their fleet, and the plane today would use 50% less jet fuel than they would 40 years ago. But there is another question: is that flying will never be carbon neutral. It's just not possible. In this century, it won't be possible. So this is also a kind of operation of greenwashing. My approach at this level is we should have to deal with the true cost. And the true cost is when you include in the price the cost of externality. Because with our current system, the profit is taken by the corporation, good for them, but the externalities are left to the taxpayer. Because if people are getting cancers because they live next to an airport, they are not going to be taxed or charged for this intoxication and this disease, right? And I think, and also this is one of the approach, is that we have to measure things. So the first recommendations I make to companies is that let's measure. And let's measure, what do we want to measure? What is your priority? Is it efficiency, which is, for me, a good way to approach people? And then afterwards, we can measure the induced profitability made by these policies, knowing that this profit usually is not coming on the first quarter, but is a long-term profit or mid-term profit. But there are so many low-hanging fruits that then somehow, as long as it's operational, people get easily convinced. Because then you solve one pain, the first one. How do I make more money? How do I spend less? It's another challenge when you go to the head and then you have to make the strategic choices. Because this is where the culture of the organization has to be changed.
Talking about companies that are trying to be sustainable, embedding sustainability into their operations, what are they usually doing wrong? Or are they just really taking some of the tools that have been in place that aren't really doing anything? Like, what is really going wrong?
I would give two answers. I would give the answer to the legacy companies because of ignorance, lack of training, or lack of knowledge. First, the sustainability operation has been given to the marketing department because it was cool to have a nice glossy catalog or annual report showing some ships and all this. So it was a marketing tool, right? And it is still a marketing tool, but unfortunately, it's a lot of greenwashing. And in some countries, You have a very strict legislation when it comes to representation of being green, but it's not valid for all countries. In some other countries, people can tell whatever they want. If you look at European countries, the legislation in Germany or in France, for example, is very strict. You cannot claim an environmental benefit that you cannot prove. Well, so we were talking about strategy. When the second, after the greenwashing, then the big organization, they started all this CRD and scope 1, 2, 3 reporting. So to whom did they give it? To the financial department. Because it's serious. It's reporting. It's numbers. Right? And even these numbers need to be audited. So, the big four, they had to go through the door, but they came back through the window. Because they did it in a financial way, right? They look at the reporting. Does it match the reporting requirements? And then this gets lost because the CEO does not understand the concept of double materiality, for example, right? So it is a tool that is not used in a lot of companies to make strategic changes. And this is the challenge that we have. There are some people that do. I have the example, for example, of GSK, the vaccine company. They are making a serious audit of all the supply chain and all the scope 3 activities. So yes, it's efficiency, but it allows people to take, if not strategic, but operational decisions that are in the frame of this strategy, right? This is for the big companies that really, as mentioned before, I gave you the numbers, a lot of board members and CEOs are not aware and it's not a priority to them. It's kind of, let's do it because it's fashionable. And they also don't perceive also the risk management. What is interesting, and I've seen this number, is that actually the one that becomes sensitive to the topic are the one that had to deal with the catastrophes. The fire in Los Angeles, the floods I don't know where, in Europe. Toyota could not produce cars a few years ago because one of the factory was flooded. And because this was all this just-in-time operation and logistics, etc., they could not deliver cars. So if you have not been confronted to the issue, you are maybe saying, it's for others. It's like the car crashes. It's other people. It's not me. I drive well. So there is this kind of fear that is there. So this is for the legacy companies. Some make efforts, but there are some businesses where there is no solution. You can tell me whatever you want on a lot of industries. Their activities is by nature polluting, damaging, etc., etc. Right? So how do we mitigate that? Right? Just so before the discussion now, an invitation from one event organizer, well-known event organizer, and he says, "Come to take to the leaders in sustainability." During, I don't know, you have to pay hefty amount to go there. But what would they put leaders in sustainability? Coca-Cola, Nestle, PepsiCo. Those guys are the biggest 3 plastic bottle producers or users in the world. And when you tell one of them, and I am in Switzerland, I see Nestle almost every day, and when we talk to them and they say, but consumers want plastic, but also consumers want straw or Q-tips, and this is forbidden in Europe. Okay, so you see, it's all mingled because you have legislation, you have the changes very often. There is the risk assessment. There is the reputation and the brand reputation through the customers. Also want to go to the startup, which is a different approach. Actually, I mentor a lot of startups. I would say 90% of I also work for the Mercedes-Benz Foundation. They have a budget of 135 million euros. They've started that. It's the core business is sustainability, right? Or if the core business is not sustainability, it has a direct link on sustainability, producing better material, producing better heating system, producing modern ways of of farming, beef farming with data centers, creating new material, etc. So the approach is not the same, you see, because in one they have to put the sustainability suit, and the other one, it's the rest that is the suit. The sustainability is at the heart of the activity. So this is why I learned myself to look at the angles, and it's all these questions are very complex in some respect, and I think we have to look at this. One needs to have a systemic approach, actually, because everything depends on everything. There are many, many parameters. So this is really challenging, but this is what makes it very interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely not going to be one size fits all solution, right?
Yeah.
So you've talked a little bit about different sustainability kind of initiatives. What are some of the common constraints that leaders are having when trying to align sustainability with business growth? So some of it's regulation, but beyond that, can we explore more of that?
Yes, how you make it a strategy. So it's quite easy to convince people that, as we mentioned earlier, to make operational decisions. Okay, this is quite easy. There is a study, and there is also AI. There are a lot of tools which I have my reservations on AI because of the energy intensity. But I would say the operational decisions are easy to take, and easy people. I would not say easily convinced, but it's feasible because this is a world that they understand. Is how do we make more money? The complication is when you have to talk about the corporate strategy. So I think what is very important, and I mentioned that earlier, is to really make a 360 review of what they do. What they do, how much does it cost, where the room for improvements. Would not it be better to apply the blue ocean strategy via creating new markets? So, for example, a company that is a mid-sized company that you advised, they were in heavy metallurgy, and this is a business where you have a lot of competition, very low margin, commodity type of business. And now the majority of the sales and profit comes from making micro or mini power plants that they can sell, and they're very successful. They can sell them in emerging countries because there is always a river where you can put along the line. So you see, it's still metal. It's still power, but the application is in a more upmarket product, more sophisticated, more added value. So this is a strategic decision, right? So these are the things that are more complicated because it disturbs the status quo of organization. And people and also leaders, the changing is bringing insecurity. So is how do we deal with insecurity? How do we convince people that prefer the status quo? And then how does it pass along the chain? And this is where I am coming back to the necessary cultural change of organization. Because
Change is
when you
hard.
talk to the top, yes, but you cannot go against the wind.
Right, right.
And even if some countries are backpedaling, including the EU, by the way, they've relaxed the reporting norms. And I think they made a mistake, actually, first by issuing such complex reporting norms, because it's very costly. And this is one of the arguments that were used by the industrialists in Europe. It's very costly because the system is very complex. Who wanted to achieve something that is difficult to achieve, that necessitate a lot of resources. And yes, it's a strategic tool because you can only change what you can measure. But despite that, the majority of the companies say that they want to continue on that way. So afterwards, coming back to the same question, where do they want to start? What do they know that they don't know? Or they don't know what they don't know, you see? And this is challenging.
I want to go back first to your comment about AI. Do you think that it's possible for AI to be green? Are there initiatives working in that direction that you've experienced, or are we kind of going backwards with that effort?
So it's a very interesting point. I have been working as a mentor on a project that was about feeding electricity to data centers. And it was very innovative because it was some agro-electric production. So what they would do, they would use the field for the solar panels, but below they would raise sheep and bees. So I understand it does not offset, but the electricity, the electricity with the solar panel is not always effective for the reason that we know. We need to store a lot of electricity in the night, etc. But also there, besides this green approach to solar panels, allowing the company to raise biodiversity credits and bee credits, etc., because it's a shelter for the nature, the sheep and the bees. There are also technologies that are being developed to store the electricity. So there is a Finnish company that is using some mining material. I cannot describe with precision, but it keeps the heat a very long time. So as soon as this technology of heat or electricity storage will be cheaper and less rare earth intensive, for example, because in batteries you have to use rare earths that are very expensive, maybe not always in the preferred region of the various countries and not in huge quantities. This, I think, will really mitigate the emissions by the centers, by the data centers, right? So some have the solutions, and I'm not talking about my clients because I don't have the guys in my client who want to build an atomic power plant. So is atomic power green? This is another question. It does not produce CO2, at least during operation, but I don't want to go into this chapter because it would take another hour. But I understand that you see a country like Ireland as a problem is electricity shortages due to all these data centers that are there. And what people don't know is that all this electricity that is used by Irish data centers, almost all of it is produced by fossil fuels. So in that case, it's a real concern. And the computing capacity needs to increase. We don't have time, so doubling every 18 months or something like this. Yes. So we have to find solutions there. And sometimes, again, applying the externality cost into the price, including them. And again, if we pay the true price of goods and services, yes, some people are going to lose, some people are going to win. But do we have any choice, is my question. I'm not sure. It's another area of complexity and food for thought.
Yep, yep. Another issue for us to be looking at. So
Yes.
what are some of the things that you are utilizing to help businesses evaluate the green initiatives or their sustainable practices? Are there systems and tools that you're currently
So,
utilizing?
so it's mainly I'm not in charge of the measurements. I recommend what to measure. I discuss with what to measure. But there are a lot of very good software that are measuring that. So the technology has really evolved. So in the startup I am taking care of, Blue Ocean Future, this is what we develop: is the MRVs, measurement, reporting, and validation. So we are also developing a software, but software can also be used for a company, right, that want to measure its impact. So I am giving you an example of a project we have been working on. Some nations want to produce products from seaweed. So how do you model that? Actually, it's a computer modeling via Internet of Things and through artificial intelligence. Can you reproduce the patterns? Another project that I am working on is, for example, reforestation. A reforestation project in a tropical country. This is also interesting. What do you measure? How do you measure? For that, You measure biodiversity. You measure decarbonization. You measure also the inputs. For example, for this reforestation, you have to plant 70 different species of plant to reproduce the forest. You cannot just plant pine trees, etc. This has also got to be measured. You measure the growth. Is it the good strategy? Is it the good trees? Is it, etc., etc. So measurement is really an essential tool.
The key, measuring.
Yes.
Being a scientist myself, it's all about you can't change what you don't measure, right? There's always got to be a measurement, a starting point, and then how do we go from there? Yeah.
This is raising an important point because in everything the green move and journey, you also have emotional people. So you have people who measure, you have people who decide, you have people who have emotions, and sometimes they concentrate on the tree, but not on the forest behind. You see, also a matter of choosing one's priority and the priority of the organization based on facts and not necessarily on emotions. If you do on emotion, you probably end up doing greenwashing.
Yeah, emotion needs to be kept out of it a lot of times. So I just want to quickly touch on, you've done work with founders as well as startups. What do you see as the difference in how legacy businesses versus startups can approach sustainability?
Okay, so this is what we briefly touched upon. It is the fact that for one, it's built in, you know? It's like a car. The car can be built in to be more sustainable than usual. And the other, they might change the carburetor to change it into an injection. So for one, it's a raison d'être. It's a core principle. And for the other one would be a constraints. Most of the time today, it's considered as a constraint. And for the legacy enterprises, we have to convince them that they're going to make money and thrive. So this is the biggest challenge to these people, right? Because they look at you with sympathy.
Yeah. Do you think that you can get as much value? It's like I look at it as like a house, right? Like it's harder to retrofit a house to have sustainability features than it is to build a house with them in it. But do you think that it's still worth the effort? Is there enough benefit to make those changes within a legacy business?
Largely, really largely. It's
okay.
I would say you're gonna kill your company if you don't do anything. And it's not only about operational issues. It's really look at the horizon from a different angle. What can you do to be wanted by your customers? Right? So, and it's proven, 90% of the companies that put programs, they're the worst in the midterm, they're break even. In the long term, let's say 10 years, they are all, I think it's 90%, it has been profitable. I have seen from a report that was made by Bocconi University in Italy, and they were saying that in average it's 7% improvement of the financial results. Right? You make 7% more by applying corporate social responsibilities and other measures. But this is 10 years. The challenge is how do we convince people to look at 10 years when the objective is the next quarter bonus, right? So this is a culture. So for example, I have to work with family companies because the time scope is not the same. They don't care if they're going to make money in 5 years, 7 or 12. They do, but they're not going to be fired if they don't do it, you see? So I really like these companies because there's a time horizon. Because if you talk to big companies, they will say, but my budget is already set for next year, okay? It's too expensive and it's disturbing my allocation of funds. But buying a new machine is also disturbing your allocation of funds. Or buying a new, I don't know, moving to another office, spending marketing. And there is also this idea in a lot of corporates that growth is the issue. More sale, more, and it's complicated because we use 1.75 times the planet. If you look at the overshoot day, and out of the planetary boundaries, we have 6 out of 9, and the CTM is just being reached. That's so we don't have choice. So when we have this discussion with people, somehow it is not. Because what is at stake is very important.
Yeah.
For them as well, for the organization as well. You have to adapt, and you have to adapt faster and faster.
Well, I like what you said. That's like, if you don't make the change, the business is going to die, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that I really want to highlight that. So that kind of leads just into my next question. If you could give every founder or operator one guiding principle when building sustainability, what would it be?
It depends. Again, if I look at the mid to large size organization, I would say listen, listen, listen. And the second instruction would be explain, explain, explain. Right? So, because there is a shortage of communication in this area. There is of serious communication. You have the page, as you see, there is a Swiss very well-known airlines, and they put a page of what they do good, etc. But at the same time, they put 100 tons metal plate to rebalance the plane because there are less passengers in first class than in economy.
Mm-hmm.
So all these random and contradictory decisions prove that there is no concern, that it's not embedded in the organization, right? So listen to your stakeholders, listen to the changes that are the societal changes, the legal changes, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. As I told you, seen that, done that. And the big four are not always making it easy because otherwise they would not charge so much. And then explain, because you have to explain the value of your product to your customers. If it comes to the small companies, I tell them just do it, but don't forget that your resources are limited. So try to do the operation. Try to concentrate because, as mentioned, mostly these companies, they are in sustainability sector. I say check the numbers because this is the challenge that I have with this startup that I'm mentoring. They think that they can do everything, that they're going to save the world, and actually, but it's good because it gives some dynamic into this market. But sometimes they forget the numbers. So stay focused. Know that it will be patient, but you will be the winners. You will be the winners because you are producing a product that has value, because there is a lot of value that is not extracted. For example, when I look at the waste management that is in some countries, I mean, they lose billions. When I see that some companies don't use the principles of circular economies, it costs a fortune as well. Linear economy today, especially with the trend that will be to one day or the other integrate the externality costs into the equation or the use of renewable or non-renewable natural capital. We were discussing about water. Water is in principle renewable, but not renewable capital because it's being depleting, because we put cornfields to allegedly put it in gasoline. It smells corn, by the way. But they don't focus on the main problem, is that if you have a car that is using less, you will not need to use this water to make the corn. So this is very complex because there is a lot of cross interest. But the reality check will hit people hard because you see the weather is worse and worse. The thunderstorms worse and worse. The flood, Texas, North Carolina last year. I mean, so and as I mentioned, the people that have the The risk factors by companies are well understood. That is understood. Again, we come back. So how do they start? How do they apply? How do they move forward?
It's definitely that risk needs to be reviewed. So we're going to wrap up. And I'm really appreciating your perspective about all of this. It's very eye-opening, enlightening, and also somewhat daunting. So I'm just curious, what keeps you optimistic or grounded in this like complex space?
Optimistic, it really depends on the days. Because sometimes I am really shocked by what governments or companies can take as decisions. I can but do we have any choice? So it's grounded, not grounding, pessimistic, optimistic. Do we have any choice than doing otherwise? So I am very lucky because I talk to people that are very smart. So there are a lot of people that still, even if there is a lot of ignorance at top level, business level, there is this growing minority, you know? 5 years ago, I would have told you a different story. 3 years ago, the story would have also been different. So I feel the change. So what keeps me optimistic? Even if it does not change as fast as we would like it for the sake of the life on the planet. I see, so for example, I don't know if you're aware of that, but in France, they voted a law to reintroduce a nicotinide insecticides, etc. So it kills the bees, it brings cancer, etc. But they voted the law because they are very strong agricultural lobbies in France, and they have a big weight on the electoral point of view. You have already 1.5 million French voters that have sent a petition to the government. Okay? The law is voted. The law is not going to be unvoted because they say, but in EU, it's legal. Why would make it illegal in France? Yeah, but still 1.5 million people, and it's a peaceful thing. Do we want a peaceful discussions or do we want riots? And honestly, I am in favor of the dialogue, and this is what I tell companies. I am not coming here to bother you. I am coming here to help you define solutions because you are the one that know your business the best.
Right.
What you don't necessarily know is how to optimize off the beaten track according to this relatively new constraints such as sustainability and risk management. How do you how do you adapt your organization to survive? You see, if you look at the stock exchange indexes, there are a lot of companies in the history, even recent, that did not adapt, and they were in the Dow Jones 100, and they are now bankrupt. So, and this is the threat to organization. Be proactive. Be proactive.
Yes. Be proactive.
And don't wait for the tile to fall from the roof on your head.
Right.
It's a matter of time.
Don't wait for the flood. Don't wait for the catastrophe, right? Like, don't wait for the monumental moment to say, oh, man, I need to do something.
Yes.
Be proactive and measure, right? Be proactive and measure. And listen.
Yes. And explain.
Explain. There you go. Awesome. Yeah. Well, JC, I really appreciate your time. This has been an amazing conversation. I look forward to hopefully working with you more and hearing more about your amazing work. Where can people connect with you or learn more about your work? Or do you have any call to action from people that you would like to share? So
the easiest is really LinkedIn because it allows people to also check my background, and I follow LinkedIn. It's the first filter because I also want it's the best way, and I will immediately address this tough question for the companies and what do they want. We're a small team, a few people together. Specialist in computer science. In the team, there is a specialist in risk management with a really top guy in the risk management. We operate in a very confidential way because these are complicated and strategic decisions, and companies want to have the right to be ready before they start explain. So LinkedIn is really the best. As I mentioned, I am open to spending time with mid-size, small, and it's a matter of which country are we defining small. So a small company in the US would be a mid-sized company in Europe, for example. So I am open for discussions. I am open for advising and changing leaders in a constructive way. I have a lot of time and gained a lot of and as you said, the question is, this is usually something that my clients really appreciate because I give them another perspective.
Absolutely.
On the strategy, and what we do with the organization in the next years.
Well, thank you so much again, JC. Yes, anybody who's interested in connecting with JC, please go find him on LinkedIn. Again, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Louder Than Green. Every guest we feature and every story we share is a reminder that sustainable business is not just about what you do, it's about how you do it. I'm incredibly grateful for this community, for everyone building differently, leading with integrity, and turning up the volume on what matters most. You can find more episodes and join the conversation at www.greenthatdream.com. And remember, regeneration is a practice. Make yours heard.